Hello, listener. If you're new here, consider subscribing and comment below where you're listening from. My name is Daniel Harper. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a scientist. I was a seasonal technician stationed at a remote Arctic weather outpost, responsible for monitoring pressure systems, ice movement, and wind shear data meant to keep cargo planes safe on routes that crossed places no one ever saw from the ground. Most days my job was quiet. Screens, numbers, wind howling against steel walls. No people. No traffic. Just ice that never stopped shifting beneath our feet. When the world started to break down far to the south, we were told to keep working. No panic. No evacuation. Just maintain the station and wait for instructions that never came. This is how I turned a frozen weather station into the only safe place for miles, and survived the first 27 days after something woke up under the ice. The station sat on steel pylons drilled straight into permafrost. No trees, no roads. Just wind and ice that never stopped moving. Even on clear days, the horizon felt unfinished, like the world had ended and forgotten to tell us. The wind never truly died up there. It only changed direction. It rattled the steel legs beneath the station, sang through cable lines, and worked its way into every seam, no matter how tight you sealed the doors. After a while, you stopped hearing it as sound and started feeling it as pressure, like something leaning on the building, testing it patiently. My job was simple on paper. Check sensors, log pressure drops, keep the generators alive. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't trained for combat or emergencies involving people. I was a technician, the kind that knew how systems failed before they screamed. The kind that trusted numbers more than instincts, because instincts panic and numbers don't. The station ran on routines. If you respected the routine, the place stayed predictable. If you rushed it, the Arctic reminded you how small you were. Every morning, I followed the same loop. Wind tower first, checking tension on the guy wires, listening for harmonic vibration that could tear a cable loose in high gusts. Then the radar dome, making sure ice hadn't built unevenly on the housing. Ice weight distribution mattered more than people realized. One bad load, and the whole dome could shear. From there I checked the fuel shed. Diesel thickened fast in the cold. Filters clogged. Valves froze half open. I logged temperatures manually because digital readings lagged in extreme cold, and lag gets people killed. Then came the generators. 2 primaries. 1 backup. I ran them in rotation, short cycles, never letting one sit cold for too long. A dead generator up there wasn't an inconvenience. It was a countdown. Finally, I ended the loop at the console most people tried not to think about. The sub-ice monitoring system. Officially, it tracked glacial movement beneath the station, pressure changes, slow shifts in ice mass, micro-fractures forming deep below the surface. The kind of data cargo pilots never saw but relied on anyway. That last console sat behind a locked access panel. We weren't supposed to touch it without clearance. The instructions were clear: monitor output only. No recalibration. No manual overrides. No digging into raw feeds. They told us it was sensitive equipment. Expensive. Experimental. I accepted that explanation at first. Most people did. But I had a habit of noticing patterns. And patterns don't care about official explanations. Normal glacial readings drift. They slide slowly over time, responding to temperature, pressure, seasonal weight. It's messy data, organic, predictable in its unpredictability. But this system didn't behave like that. The numbers didn't drift. They pulsed, not fast, not dramatically, just enough to feel wrong if you stared at them too long. A rise, a pause, a drop, then silence, then the same rise again. I asked about it once during a supply check-in call. HQ brushed it off. Calibration artifact. Sensor noise. Ice does weird things under pressure. Maybe they were right. Or maybe they just didn't want a technician asking questions that didn't have comfortable answers. Life at the station was quiet otherwise. 3 of us on rotation. Limited contact. Limited conversation. You learned quickly that isolation didn't make people crazy, it made them honest. You couldn't hide who you were when there was nothing to distract you. At night, I lay in my bunk listening to the building flex. Steel expanding, bolts settling, ice shifting somewhere below, far deeper than any sound should travel. I trusted the structure. I trusted the routines. I trusted the generators, the cables, the numbers on my screens. What I didn't trust was the silence between pulses. Because silence, in a place like that, usually meant something was storing energy. Waiting. The first alert did not come from the news. It came through an aviation emergency channel that we only monitored when weather conditions became dangerous for aircraft. The signal cut in without warning. No greeting, no call sign, no procedure, just breathing, heavy and uneven. Too close to the microphone. They are attacking ground crews. The transmission ended there. At first I assumed it was panic. Someone tired. Someone overwhelmed. Aviation channels carried fear like static during storms. That was normal. Then a second transmission came through. Different voice. Same tone. Runway personnel evacuated. Lost contact with the tower. They are not stopping. Down south airports began shutting down one by one. Flight identifiers disappeared from the screen. Cargo routes were rerouted and then canceled entirely. Cities went quiet in a way that only systems do when they collapse all at once. No sirens, no broadcasts, just absence. Satellite feeds began to lag. News images froze halfway through sentences. Emergency banners flashed briefly and vanished. But up here nothing changed. The wind continued to howl around the station the same way it always had. The generators stayed online. Pressure readings remained stable. It felt wrong. Like standing in a room where the sound suddenly cuts out, but no one else reacts. Headquarters finally sent a message after the 3rd emergency transmission. Maintain operations. Do not alarm personnel. That was the entire message. No explanation. No context. No plan. Just continue working. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Because when systems fail, the first thing to disappear is not power. It is honesty. I walked the station again. Slower this time. I checked doors. Checked locks. Counted radios. The other technicians pretended they were no longer listening to the emergency channel. That was how I knew they were afraid. People do not ignore bad information unless they already believe it. By the 4th hour, the transmissions changed. Less shouting. More confusion. In one call, someone was crying in the background. Another cut off mid-scream. Then silence. Down south, the world was clearly tearing itself apart. But up here we were still filing reports. Still checking fuel levels. Still behaving as if routine could shield us from reality. That was the lie we held onto. Procedures are designed for accidents. They are not designed for events no one wants to name. I attempted to contact headquarters again. No reply. The satellite uplink dropped shortly after. Automated responses replaced real voices. Message received. Please stand by. Stand by for what? The station had always been isolated by design. Isolation kept the data clean. Isolation reduced variables. Now isolation felt like abandonment. Hours passed without a single transmission. Then just before midnight the channel crackled to life again. One voice. Calm. Controlled. They are not sick. That sentence stayed with me. Not sick. I looked toward the sub-ice monitoring console without meaning to. The pulse pattern remained unchanged. Up. Pause. Down. Slow. Deliberate. The wind pressed against the structure, and the steel responded with a deep groan. For the first time since arriving at the station, I questioned whether height truly protected us, or if it simply delayed whatever was coming. The final message from headquarters arrived shortly before all contact stopped. Maintain operations. That was all. No evacuation. No timeline. No reassurance. That was the moment everything became clear. We were not being protected. We were being left behind. We were already alone. They just had not told us yet. The power flickered at 02:14 in the morning. Not a blackout. Worse, a partial systems failure. The lights did not go out all at once. They dimmed, recovered, then dimmed again. The hum of the station changed pitch. Not louder, not quieter. Just wrong. I checked the main panel first. One generator had dropped offline without warning. The second was still running but under abnormal load. Cold air rushed through vents that should not have been open. Then the alarms started. Not the fire alarm. Not pressure loss. The sub-ice sensors. The console lit up in red and amber. Pressure values surged upward faster than anything I had seen before. Ice does not move like that. Not unless something forces it. I pulled the raw feed even though we were not supposed to. The numbers were climbing in sharp steps now. Up. Pause. Up again. Then the satellite link died. No warning. No countdown. Just gone. I tried the backup uplink. Nothing. I reached for the emergency channel. Static. No restart from below. No remote assistance. No rescue inbound. That was the moment procedure stopped meaning anything. I stood in the center of the control room, staring at the station map mounted on the wall. Main building. Glass panels. Multiple entrances. Long corridors. Designed for efficiency, not defense. If I stayed there, I would be surrounded by blind spots and reflections. Too many doors. Too many ways in. The alarms kept pulsing behind me. Pressure rising. Ice shifting. The building groaned as wind pushed against it from a new direction. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Fear makes people rush. Rushing makes mistakes. I walked the map with my finger. Fuel shed. No visibility. Living quarters. Two open. Then the wind equipment annex. One door. Steel panels. Elevated above ground. Clear sight lines on all sides. Designed to survive storms, not people. I checked the time again. 02:19. 5 minutes since the flicker. That was all it took for the station to stop feeling like a workplace and start feeling like a trap. I grabbed my pack from under the desk. Cold weather gear. Flashlight. Radio. Tool roll. I shut down what I could. Left the rest running. The corridor felt longer than it ever had. Lights flickered overhead. Emergency strips glowed dim blue. The wind howled louder with every step. Something beneath the floor shifted hard enough that I felt it through my boots. I did not run. Running wastes breath. I reached the annex door and paused long enough to listen. Nothing but wind. Metal strain. The distant crack of ice. I went inside. The space was smaller than the main building but tighter. Stronger. Steel walls instead of glass. Reinforced mounts. One entry point. I closed the door. Then I locked it. The sound of the latch settling echoed louder than it should have. I leaned my weight against the door and waited. The alarms from the main building were muffled now. Distant. Like a memory. I did not know if anyone else was still alive in the station. I did not know if the ice would hold. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I had crossed a line. There was no returning to normal operations. No waiting for instructions. From that moment on, the station was no longer my workplace. It was my shelter. And whatever was happening beneath the ice was no longer a distant anomaly. It was close. The first rule of survival is simple. Do not improvise when cold can kill you in minutes. The annex was not comfortable. It was not meant to be. It was built to survive wind and pressure. That made it useful. I started with the door. One entry point means everything depends on it. I checked the hinges for play. Metal on metal. Solid. Then I ran cargo straps across the frame and anchored them to structural mounts. Not tight enough to warp the door. Just tight enough to resist force. If something pushed from the outside, the pressure would spread across the frame instead of ripping it open. Windows came next. There were only 2 narrow observation panels. Both were thick reinforced glass. Strong but dangerous. Glass reflects light. Light attracts attention. I taped emergency blankets across the inside surface. Silver side in, dull side out. It was not about insulation. It was about invisibility. At night, no glow would bleed out. No silhouette would move across the glass. Shelter is not walls. Shelter is what you choose to reveal. Once the perimeter felt stable, I turned to water. You can survive days without food. You cannot survive hours without hydration in cold air. Snow looks clean. It is not. I collected it from upwind drifts away from exhaust and foot traffic. I melted it slowly in a metal container near residual heat. Never directly on flame. Fast heat fractures containers. Fast heat wastes fuel. Slow melt. Slow boil. Patience keeps you alive. I marked one container as raw. One as treated. No exceptions. Heat was next. The backup stove was small and inefficient. That made it safe. Large flames eat oxygen and fuel at the same time. Small flames can be controlled. I ran the stove in short cycles. 10 minutes on. 30 off. Enough to raise ambient temperature without advertising my presence. I positioned reflective surfaces behind the stove to push heat inward. Every degree mattered. Then I planned movement. People think movement means escape. Up here it meant efficiency. I marked zones on the floor with tape. One corner for sleeping. One for gear. One for tools. Nothing crossed zones without reason. Gear stayed packed even when not in use. Tools returned to the same position every time. If the lights failed, I needed to move by memory. Order was not comfort. Order was speed. Speed is life. I tested the radio next. Short transmission only. No idle chatter. Silence preserves options. I sat down and listened. Wind. Metal strain. The faint vibration of ice far below. The annex responded to pressure the way it was designed to. Flex without breaking. Groan without failing. That sound told me the structure was holding. I wrote a checklist on cardboard and taped it to the wall. Door secured. Light controlled. Water processed. Heat rationed. Movement planned. Simple rules. Clear rules. Rules remove hesitation. I ate a small ration without heating it. Saved fuel. Saved time. Then I lay down in the sleeping zone, fully dressed. Boots off but within reach. I did not sleep. Sleep comes after security, not before. Somewhere beneath the ice something shifted again. The vibration traveled through steel and into bone. The base did not react. That was good. The point of a shelter is not to stop danger. It is to buy time. Time to think. Time to decide. Time to survive. That night I understood something important. The annex was no longer part of the station. It was its own system now. Independent. Contained. Alive. And as long as I respected the rules I had just set, it would keep me alive. I needed food, fuel, rope. Those 3 things decided whether the annex was a shelter or just a place to wait for the end. I did not rush. Rushing makes noise. Noise makes mistakes. Before stepping outside, I clipped into the safety line and checked the anchor twice. Once by sight, once by touch. Steel does not lie to your hands. The wind hit immediately, harder than before. It pushed snow sideways and erased distance. I moved along the marked route between structures. Low profile. Slow steps. Always keeping one hand on the line. If I slipped, there would be no one to pull me back. The main station loomed ahead like a shape from memory, rather than a place I had worked hours earlier. I opened the door just enough to slide inside, and closed it behind me without letting it slam. The smell was wrong. Cold metal, blood, and something sweet underneath that did not belong in a mechanical space. I did not search for the source. I did not look for bodies. Bodies answer nothing. Supplies answer everything. I kept my head down and my light low. Short bursts only. Never sweeping the beam. I followed my own footprints from earlier and avoided areas where glass reflected light. The first stop was the storage cage. Canned food, dry packs, energy bars meant for emergency crews. I filled a crate and did not sort it. Sorting wastes time. Fuel came next. Spare canisters were stacked near the generator room. I checked seals by hand. Cold plastic cracks without warning. 2 were still good. Rope was harder. I found a coil near the maintenance lockers half buried under debris. I tested the fibers slowly. No snap. No fray. It went into the crate. The silence inside the station felt heavier than the wind outside. No alarms now. No radio chatter. Just the building settling and something else beneath it. A sound traveled through the floor. Not loud. Not sudden. A drag. Slow, like weight being pulled across ice. I froze, listened. Nothing followed. That was worse. I did not investigate. Curiosity kills faster than hunger. I secured the crate with a strap and dragged it behind me, keeping the load low to avoid tipping. The return trip felt longer. The wind had shifted again, and the line pulled against my harness with steady pressure. Halfway back I stopped and checked the anchor once more. Still solid. The annex came into view through blowing snow. Dark. Unmoving. I reached the door and pulled the crate inside before unclipping. Then I shut the door. The sound of it closing was final and dull and comforting all at once. Like closing a car door in the middle of a blizzard. Inside the annex the air was still. I leaned against the wall and waited for my breathing to slow. Nothing followed me. That did not mean nothing was there. I inventoried the crate carefully. Calories, fuel, rope. Not enough for comfort. Enough for time. Time was the real currency now. I reinforced the door strap again and sat down in the gear zone without removing my gloves. The raid had worked. That meant the next one would be worse. The station had given up what it could. It would not give anything else freely. I found them sheltering near the fuel shed. They were sitting low against the steel wall with their backs to the wind. Not hiding. Not running. Waiting. I did not approach right away. People who survive long enough to wait are usually dangerous in one of 2 ways. They are either desperate or disciplined. I kept my distance and called out before stepping closer. Say your name. Say it slow. The woman answered first. Maya. Weather medical support. Her voice was steady. Too steady for panic. The man hesitated before speaking. Tomas. Generator systems engineer. I made them turn slowly. Hands visible. Jackets open. No bites. No blood that did not belong to the cold. I asked the questions that matter when the world stops pretending. Have you been injured? Have you been alone? Have you heard anything moving that should not move? They answered without arguing. That mattered more than the answers themselves. I led them to the annex one at a time. Same route. Same safety line. No shortcuts. Inside the annex, the space felt smaller immediately. 3 people changed the weight of a room. Not physically. Mentally. Mia scanned the space the way medics do. Not looking for comfort. Looking for failure points. Tomas went straight to the generator readouts without asking. That told me everything I needed to know about him. Before anyone sat down, I set the rules. Not suggestions. Rules. Say it out loud when you move. Silence causes collisions. Collisions cause noise. Noise invites attention. Nothing rolls on the floor. If something drops, it stays where it lands until someone calls it out. Loose objects become weapons when the building shakes. No touching glass after dark. Glass reflects. Glass silhouettes. Glass lies about what is on the other side. They listened. No one smiled. No one joked. That was good. Mia added one rule of her own. If you feel pain, you say it immediately. Pain ignored becomes infection. Tomas nodded and added another. Generators run on schedule even if we are tired. Fatigue kills systems before it kills people. We wrote the rules on cardboard and taped them to the wall at eye level. You do not memorize rules in stress. You read them. We checked each other next. Maya ran a quick exam. Hands, neck, eyes. Cold hides symptoms. She knew where to look. Tomas walked me through the generator load calculations he had been running in his head since the blackout. His math matched mine within margin. That built more trust than words. We divided roles. Maya handled medical checks and watch rotation. She had the calm for it. Tomas stayed on power and fuel management. He knew the machines better than anyone. I took external movement and supply planning, because I already had. No one argued. Arguments are luxuries. When night settled in again, the annex sounded different. More breathing. More weight shifting. Still controlled. We ate without speaking much. Not out of fear. Out of focus. Later, Maya admitted something quietly while checking a bandage on her own hand. She said the ice beneath the station had been making her nauseous for days. Pressure changes she could feel in her bones. She said it reminded her of standing too close to heavy machinery. Tomas said he had noticed harmonic vibrations in the generator mounts that did not match wind patterns. I told them about the pulses. Up. Pause. Down. No one laughed. That night we rotated watch. 1 awake. 2 resting. When it was my turn, I stood near the door and listened to the building breathe. The rules held. No one forgot to call out movement. Nothing rolled. No light touched glass. Trust did not come from friendship. It came from repetition. From discipline. From knowing that when something finally tested the door, we would all react the same way. Not as individuals. As a system. And for the first time since the station went silent, I understood something important. Survival was no longer about where we were. It was about how we behaved inside that space. The storm hit like a freight train. There was no warning buildup. No gradual rise. One moment the wind was loud. The next it was violent. Metal screamed as the first gust slammed into the annex. Not rattling. Not shaking. Screaming. The cargo straps across the door went tight all at once. The sound was sharp and sudden, like a snapped cable pulled to its limit. I braced instinctively and then forced myself to stay still. Movement wastes balance. Balance keeps you alive. Snow hammered the structure from every direction. Not drifting anymore. Thrown. The annex flexed the way it was designed to. Steel bowing just enough to survive. Bolts groaning under load. Maya was already against the far wall counting breaths. Tomas had his eyes on the generator readouts, watching the load climb and settle again. No one spoke. Talking wastes air. The lights flickered, but stayed on. That mattered more than comfort. Then something changed. The sound beneath us deepened. Wind is chaotic. It rises and falls without rhythm. This had rhythm. A slow pressure pushing upward through the pylons. Not shaking them, lifting them. Something moved below us. Not wind. Ice shifting upward. The floor vibrated just enough that loose items tested the rules we had set. Nothing rolled. Nothing slid. The tape held. The straps held. Glass stayed dark. The building leaned and then settled again. I felt the vibration through my boots and into my legs. Not sharp. Not sudden. Heavy. Patient. Maya whispered that her teeth hurt. Pressure pain. Sinuses reacting to a change that should not have been happening. Tomas said the generator mounts were resonating at a frequency he did not recognize. That scared him more than the storm. A gust hit the annex broadside and forced the structure sideways a fraction of an inch. The straps stretched again. I counted the seconds between impacts. Storms do not keep time. This one did. Outside visibility dropped to nothing. No horizon. No depth. Just white force. I thought about the glass. I remembered the moment earlier when I had taped the emergency blankets inside the panels. How it felt unnecessary. How quiet that decision had been. Now the wind slammed debris against the outside surface hard enough to make the glass bow. If light had been visible, if silhouettes had moved, something out there would have known exactly where we were. The storm did not ease. It leaned harder. Snow forced its way into seams that had never leaked before. Ice crystals formed and shattered in the same breath. The annex groaned again and then held. Minutes stretched. No one checked the time. Time did not matter. Survival did. Another upward pressure rolled through the structure, stronger than before. The pylons responded with a deep metallic sound that echoed through the floor. Maya pressed her palm flat against the wall and said she could feel it moving. Not sliding. Rising. We did not argue. We did not speculate. Speculation wastes focus. I remember thinking one clear thought in the middle of that noise. If I had not reinforced the glass, we would already be dead. Not injured. Not trapped. Dead. The storm finally began to lose cohesion. Not stopping, just breaking apart. The wind shifted directions faster than before. Snow fell straight down instead of sideways. The pressure beneath us eased. Slowly, reluctantly. When the sound finally dropped to its usual Arctic howl, no one spoke for a long time. The annex stood. The rules stood. Whatever had pushed upward beneath the ice had stopped. For now. That night we did not celebrate. We checked every strap, every seal, every surface. Survival is not victory. It is postponement. And the storm had shown us something important. The base worked, but the world around it was changing in ways storms could not explain. Supplies ran thin, not all at once, not dramatically. They disappeared quietly the way time does when no one is watching. Calories dropped first, then fuel margins, then patience. We did the math again and again, hoping it would change. It never did. Voices got sharper without getting louder. No one yelled. No one accused. That made it worse. Tomas recalculated generator burn cycles 3 times in one night. Maya cut rations smaller without announcing it. I stopped boiling snow longer than necessary. None of us said the word yet. But we were all thinking it. One more run. The station still had supplies we could not carry before. Food locked in secondary storage. Fuel canisters we had left behind because weight mattered more than comfort. Going back meant risk. Not going back meant waiting to fail. We chose risk. The plan was simple because complicated plans break under stress. Grab visible. No searching. No detours. If you hear anything that does not belong, you leave. If someone falls, you do not stop. You pull. If something moves, you abort. No discussion. We repeated the plan until it sounded dull. That is how you know it is ready. We geared up in silence. Same harnesses. Same lines. Same routes. The storm had stripped the world clean. Snow was packed hard now. Wind steady but not violent. That was almost worse. Quiet lets things move. I went first. Then Tomas. Maya last. Spacing mattered. The main station looked smaller than before. Not damaged. Not ruined. Just tired. Like a place that had already given up everything it could. Inside the smell was stronger. Cold metal. Old blood. That same sweetness layered underneath. I did not turn my light up. I did not need to. The layout lived in my head. We went straight to the storage wing. Crates were stacked where we had left them. Undisturbed. That should have been reassuring. It was not. I loaded food without checking labels. Calories are calories. Tomas went for fuel. Maya stayed at the doorway watching the corridor behind us. We worked fast. Too fast. That is when we heard it. Not a sound. A movement. A slow dragging noise coming from deeper in the station. Not footsteps. No rhythm. Just weight pulled across metal and ice. Then something else. Breathing. Not rushed. Not panicked. Measured. Where ice should not breathe. Maya raised her hand. We froze. The sound stopped. That was worse than if it had continued. Nothing means attention. I tightened the strap on the crate and nodded once. Abort. We moved together. Slow at first, then faster. The dragging sound resumed behind us. Closer now. Still not chasing. Hurting. I did not look back. Looking back changes pace. Pace gets you killed. We reached the door. I pushed the crate through and followed. Tomas nearly slipped on the threshold but kept moving. The wind outside felt violent after the stillness inside. We clipped to the line and ran. Not blindly. Not wildly. Controlled panic. Behind us something struck metal. Hard. Once. Then again. I did not count. I did not need to. The annex came into view like a promise. I pulled the crate inside and turned to help Tomas drag the rest through. Mia was already inside pulling the door. We slammed it shut. The latch caught. The straps went tight. We waited. Nothing followed us to the door. That was not comfort. That was calculation. Inside the annex our breathing sounded too loud. Too human. Tomas sat down hard against the wall and laughed once without humor. Maya checked her hands twice even though she knew they were clean. I inventoried the crate slowly. Food. Fuel. Enough. Barely. We had what we needed to last, but not to relax. That raid cost us something we could not replace. Certainty. Whatever was inside the station now knew where we moved. How we moved. What we feared. None of us suggested another run. No one needed to. The station had drawn its line. We crossed it once more and lived. We would not be given that chance again. That night, no one slept. We sat in rotation listening to the annex breathe, waiting for something to test the door. Nothing did. And that was the most dangerous part of all. Because it meant whatever was under the ice was learning. And none of us looked back. The radio crackled just after midnight. Not loud. Not sudden. The kind of sound you miss if you are breathing too hard. I turned the dial slowly and held it there. Static cleared in uneven waves. Then a voice pushed through. Not military. Not panicked. Tired. This is Dam Station Relay. Repeat Dam Station Relay. 2 days south of your position. We froze. No one spoke until the voice repeated itself. He was not asking questions. He was not offering reassurance. He was stating facts. They had water. They had generators. They had a perimeter built for pressure, not wind. He said they were not accepting everyone. He said movement was dangerous. He said staying put was worse. Then he said something that settled the room. Height buys time, not safety. I looked around the annex. Steel walls. Straps, rules. Everything we had built had done exactly what it was supposed to do. It had bought us time. Time to understand the pattern. Time to survive storms. Time to learn that whatever was under the ice was not random. But time runs out. The voice on the radio did not rush us. He gave coordinates. A window. 48 hours. After that they would move again or shut down transmission. We asked one question. Is the route clear? There was a pause. Nothing is clear anymore. That was the answer. When the signal faded, the annex felt smaller, not weaker. Just temporary. Maya sat down and checked her pack without being told. Medical kit. Bandages. Painkillers. Tomas pulled fuel numbers from memory and began calculating distance and margin. I stood by the door and listened to the ice beneath us. It was quiet. Too quiet. No upward pressure. No movement. That did not mean safe. That meant waiting. We talked it through because you have to. Stay and ration until systems fail. Or move while legs still work and fuel still burns. Staying meant certainty. A slow end measured in degrees and calories. Leaving meant risk, cold, exposure, unknown ground. But it also meant choice. The dam station had walls built to hold water back. Thick concrete. Deep foundations. Whatever was moving beneath the ice here might not reach that far south. Or it might. But if it did, we would be no worse off than we already were. We agreed without voting. Pack light. Walk ready. No souvenirs. No comfort items. Only what keeps you moving. What stops bleeding. What lets you drink. We packed that night. Every sound was controlled. Every item checked twice. The rules on the wall stayed. We copied them onto a smaller card and taped it to the inside of the door. For whoever came after. If anyone did. Before sleeping, I took one last look around the annex. It had held through storms and pressure and fear. It had done its job. Shelters are not homes, they are tools. At dawn we would leave it behind. Not because it failed, because it succeeded. The radio stayed silent after that. But the message was clear enough. Height had bought us time. Now we had to decide what to do with it. We left supplies behind. Not by accident. By decision. Leaving everything would have slowed us down. Taking everything would have meant nothing for the next person. We packed in silence. Each of us carried one bag. No extras. No comfort. Only what lets you walk. What lets you drink. What stops bleeding. Maya checked medical items twice and removed anything that treated pain instead of injury. Pain can be endured. Infection cannot. Tomas weighed fuel with his hands instead of a scale. If it felt heavy, it stayed. If it felt light, it went. I folded the emergency blankets we had used on the glass and left one behind. Not for warmth. For light control. The annex looked different once the bags were packed. Bigger. Emptier. Like a place that had finished its purpose. We gathered the remaining supplies and stacked them where they could be seen immediately. Water containers near the door. Fuel beside the wall. Bandages on top. Nothing hidden. Nothing locked. If someone reached this place, they had already earned help. I tore a piece of cardboard from an empty crate and wrote slowly so the letters would be clear. Boil snow. Short burns. Strap doors. Stay off glass at night. Simple rules. Rules that had kept us alive. We taped the note at eye level beside the door latch. Not inside a drawer. Not on the floor, where tired eyes would land first. We sealed the door again before leaving. Not to keep people out. To make them understand that this place required intention. A loose door invites carelessness. A tight one demands respect. Before stepping away, I walked the annex one last time. I touched the wall where the pressure had pushed hardest during the storm. It was still cold. still solid. I looked at the floor where the tape marked our zones. Sleep, gear, tools. Order was still there even when we were not. That mattered. Shelters are stories. They teach you how to behave inside them. If someone came after us, I wanted them to learn the same lesson we did. Move slow. Think ahead. Do not waste light. Do not waste heat. Do not waste silence. We clipped our packs and checked each other without speaking. No ceremony. Legacy is not about memory. It is about function. We left the annex standing, not abandoned, not destroyed, ready for whoever came next. 2 days later, a truck found us. Not rescue the way movies show it. No lights, no shouting. Just an engine idling in the cold and a driver who did not ask questions. We climbed in one by one and sat on the floor with our backs against steel. No one spoke while the engine turned south. The road was broken in places. Ice cracked under the tires. The world looked smaller from ground level. When the truck stopped for fuel, I stepped out once and looked back. Not long, just enough. The station was barely visible on the horizon. A dark shape against endless white. It did not look like a fortress. It did not look important. But I knew what it had been. A place that bought time. A place that held when it needed to. A place that asked for discipline instead of hope. We did not take anything that belonged to it. We did not leave it empty. That mattered. As the truck pulled away, I understood something simple. Survival is not about being the strongest. It is about making the right decisions before you are forced to. That was how I turned a frozen Arctic weather station into the only safe place around, and survived the first days after something woke under the ice. If you are still listening, if you made it this far, like and subscribe, and tell me where you are listening from. Because somewhere out there, someone else is counting seconds, waiting for the storm to hit.